I think Canada, from a regulatory perspective, has done a really good job at providing confidence to the sector through clear and defined framework that will grow over time, but is used as a starting point to provide the stability in the industry for companies like ours to grow and for consolidation like we've done.
Hey folks, Flo here with Blockchain North. We're still at Futurist 2023. I'm here with Dean Skurka, who's the president and CEO of WonderFi in Canada. Why don't you give us your 30-second personal intro, sort of who, what, and why?
Cool. Thanks for having me. My name's Dean Skurka. I'm the president and CEO of WonderFi. WonderFi is publicly traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange and is one of Canada's leading operators of regulated crypto trading platforms.
And so I guess the biggest news for you, and a very big news for Canada, was the merger. You were already quite big, but I think you just grew even bigger. Can you give us a little bit of numbers and a little sense of the magnitude of your sort of conglomerate?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just completed the acquisition of CoinSquare and CoinSmart. And on the back of that, WonderFi will now own and operate 4 of the 10 regulated crypto trading platforms in the country. We also have a payments business that processes crypto to fiat payment processing called SmartPay. Through the CoinSquare acquisition, we also own a 43% stake in Tetra Trust, which is Canada's only qualified custodian for digital assets. Collectively, we have about 1.6 million registered accounts on the platform between retail and institutional clients. And collectively, these platforms have traded $17 billion of volume over the last 5+ years.
Well, very good. We've set the stage here. That's pretty clear. Those are eloquent numbers. So would you say you're the largest in Canada in terms of users? I mean, it sounds obvious, but...
We think we have the largest user base of crypto users in the country.
Yeah, and you operate only in Canada?
Our crypto trading businesses are exclusively catered to Canadian residents, both people and businesses, and through SmartPay, our payments business, we're actually able to have onboard clients globally.
Okay. And so how do you gauge the Canadian market today? I mean, some people would say to us that the regulators and the authorities are relatively open and collaborative compared to, for instance, the US. Other people will tell us that adoption is lagging behind. What is your assessment?
I think Canada, from a regulatory perspective, has done a really good job at providing confidence to the sector through clear and defined framework that will grow over time, but is used as a starting point to provide the stability in the industry for companies like ours to grow and for consolidation like we've done to take place. And so the regulatory landscape in Canada is unique from the rest of the world, given that there's more of a framework in place than in other jurisdictions. And for us, that's been a huge positive in our abilities to grow our companies, both at the operating level, whether it's trading crypto the way we're allowed to, with the regulatory framework behind us to support that, through initiatives we've launched like staking through BitBuy later last year. And so we think the framework in Canada is unique, certainly across the globe, and we think it's given us a really strong opportunity to grow our business.
So we keep hearing this number that about 10% of Canadians own crypto. I think it might have been 14% a year ago, something like that. We also hear that 30% of Canadians are looking at crypto. Since you have the largest user base, I want to ask you kind of how do you gauge that user base, current and potential? Sort of who are they? What are they looking at? What are their concerns?
Yeah, it's a good question. So our businesses cater to retail and institutional clients, and so obviously the needs for each of them are quite different. And so, when we think about, the growth we've seen over the last 5 years, really the adoption and the industry has really played a large part. And, when I joined in 2018, there were discussions on Bitcoin being outlawed, by certain jurisdictions or in certain parts of the world. Fast forward to 2023 and you see comprehensive regulation in Canada, you see other jurisdictions starting to follow suit. And so we think, that's really going to be the boon for the next, wave of adoption. And so with regulation in place, there may be more of a focus on institutional clients that maybe couldn't be able to access, or invest in the space the way they'd like to historically without regulated platforms there to provide that service to them. And so, we think, at a retail level, onboarding new users tends to typically move with sentiment in the market. And, when Bitcoin is in favor and everyone seems to be talking about it and believing in it again, you see a lot more of the retail flow starting to come back. In these markets, it's more so the institutions that are starting to come in that are more open-minded to the space than they had been historically, and a lot of that is because of the regulated platforms that they're able to now utilize.
Yeah, and those institutions, of course, are going to come with their user base or their clientele. On the retail side, do you have a bit of an idea of a client avatar? Like, who is investing in crypto in Canada today?
Yeah, there's a wide range of people. You have younger demographic that are more technology savvy, that understand how the technology actually operates, and they're interested in this stuff. And you look at NFTs; those have been a big entry point for a lot of younger people to understand crypto and some of the benefit from crypto. And all the way to older demographic, more sophisticated investor profile. And so we see a wide range of people that come to the platform for various reasons.
So everybody invests in crypto, basically, or at least all sorts of demographics.
I think so, yeah. And I think the big thing is just education. And so that can happen at all types of levels. It could be at a dinner party, it could be friends. And so, there's just a lot of different ways for people to think about crypto and become more comfortable with crypto. And what we find really is when people start to understand and just invest, even if it's a little bit, they become more incentivized to learn. And through that process, we're seeing people become more excited about the technology and, some of the investment opportunities that exist.
And for those who are on the fence right now, is it just more of the same kind of people who are invested today, or are there notable differences?
It's hard to say. I think whenever there's new and emerging, investment opportunities or asset classes, it's easy to be pessimistic and, easy to disregard certain opportunities entirely. Because
they've had good reason to as well.
Yeah, because it's too new to you or it's foreign to you. And, really what we believe is that, investing a little, understanding, a bit more about the technology. I think about a world that's increasingly becoming digitized. You think about, using a Visa and debit card a year ago or even now, and how, it's trending towards using Apple Pay and Visa cards on your phone. The world and payments in particular are becoming more digitized, and we think crypto can play a part in that. And I think if you think of it through a different lens, and maybe people that disregard it entirely, they might start to understand the opportunities as well.
When I look at the audience here at Futurist, and I was here last year too, what I tend to see is maybe 10% of maybe large caps or more established companies, and about 90% super entrepreneurial, scrappy startups. Given that you're involved in multiple segments of blockchain or crypto, how do you collaborate with that ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a great question. You look at some of our portfolio companies, SmartPay being one of them. That's a business that got off the ground 2 years ago, and is a B2B crypto payments business that processes crypto to fiat payments for a variety of different companies and sectors. That's a business that we're going to look to support internally over the coming years to really grow their user base and their presence in the market globally. And another example would be Tetra Trust, a company that was incubated and founded through CoinSquare, now has additional shareholders, but the largest shareholder is WonderFi. And for us, it's all about how we can support that business, given that it's the only qualified custodian in the country, to really extract synergies with our exchange and payments businesses. And so we're very mindful of the growing ecosystem and how different companies can fit within that. And where we see opportunities to grow with companies that we're not involved with, we're happy to do so. But our primary focus today would be to focus on the smaller businesses that we own and operate, and the businesses that we're invested in.
You'll be happy to know that DDA of Tetra Trust is our next interview in about 20 minutes. What are some of the major challenges that you foresee for crypto in the coming years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the industry is going through a maturation process. Obviously, all of the platforms that went out of business or went bankrupt last year is a strong example of the growing up that the industry needs to go through. And you're starting to see the signs of it now on the other side of that. BlackRock recently announced that they have filed an application for a Bitcoin ETF. I think the signals like that send strong messages to the rest of the finance industry. And so I think you're going to see that continued evolution where regulation starts to take place in pockets like the US, where there's obviously larger market opportunities, and you're going to see larger players like BlackRock getting into the industry. And so I think through that process, the industry is going to look and feel a lot different than it does today. And for WonderFi and the companies that we own and operate, we've always been focused on regulation and on building our products and services very much with the long term in mind. And we always knew regulation would play a part of this industry. And so we haven't tried to duck regulation. We've embraced it, and we have very good relationships with the regulators. And I think one of the biggest threats that this industry may face in the coming years will be the companies that don't really embrace that or recognize the broader trend and the direction that this industry needs to go in to grow.
And more crises, more debacles like FTX, Luna, etc.
Yeah, hopefully we've seen the last of those, but unfortunately in a young industry with limited regulatory oversight globally, unfortunately these things continue to come up. But you look at Canada, for an example, where regulation's been in place over the last 2 years, and there haven't been many examples of Canadian platforms that have done what Celsius and Voyager have done. And so Canada's a good example of how regulation can stabilize and help the industry mature. And so I think as other jurisdictions take note and start to implement regulation, you'll start to see that growing up process unfold globally.
And finally, what are your surest predictions about crypto for the next 2 years?
Well, that's a good question. What I'd say is being in the industry over the last 5.5 years and seeing BitFi grow from 500 users in 2018 to a few hundred thousand, now I certainly believe the industry will just continue to grow. And with that will come adoption, more users, more utility around things like payments and other verticals as well. And so I think a few years out, you're going to see far more people utilizing platforms like MetaMask and wallets, like these non-custodial wallets, for everyday purchases and things a bit more commonplace than they are today. And I think that's just part of the broader adoption trend that we'll see over the next few years and beyond.
Thank you, Dean.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
That's great.